Let's say in a very simplified way that in Sudan there evolved two identities. The identity of the North is that of assimilation. The identity of the South was identity of resistance. Now, what I mean by assimilation is, in a historical context, the assimilation process began with a situation where if you were a Muslim, Arabic speaking, culturally Arabized, and claimed or could trace or claim your ancestry to Arabia, you were elevated as an Arab and a Muslim, having a status that was relatively respected. There may be gradations of discrimination in a subtle way based on color, but by and large, you were liberally assimilated into the Arab-Muslim identity that was considered respectable. Then, in contrast, you had the South, which was seen as African, black, heathen, and therefore a target for slavery, for slave raids and all that. This is an oversimplification because the North itself had elements that were not Arabized. Yes, they might have been Muslim. Some of them were not even Muslim. Yes, they might have been Arabic speaking, although some of them had many dialects. So you could say that although the North was diverse, it was monolithically seen as Arab Muslim. And although the South was diverse, it was simplistically seen as African, black, heathen. Now Christianity came into the picture. So there was denial of the realities behind the conflict. When the British left, British governed the two parts of the country in the form of one country, two systems. When they left, those who assumed power decided to follow the same logic of the North of assimilating. So Arabization and Islamization were used as tools for national integration. And of course, for the South, this implied a degree of stratification or structured in a manner that discriminated against those who were not Arabs and who were not Muslims. South Sudan began to fear that independence was going to take us back to the days of slavery. And so they began to demand either a federal arrangement or the right of self-determination. Both were, of course, rejected, and the war started in 1955. It went on for 17 years before the North recognized that the grievance of the South must be addressed. Mediation by the Christian churches and then also later on by Emperor Haile Selassie led to the South being granted autonomy by the government of Nimeri. Now, Nimeri, after 10 years, violated that agreement. And he thought that once the Southerners were made to put down their arms, they would not have the capacity to fight again. So he then moved to reconcile with the Islamists in a manner that would restore Arab-Islamic identity for the country as a whole. So my understanding of what is going on now is that it is a continuation of the war that had started in 1955, which was paused for 10 years in 1972 and revived again in 1983. It is a continuation of a country that is painfully searching for itself to create a framework of inclusivity, equality, and dignity for all without discrimination on any ground. Now, that is, of course, an internal case. And to me, the way I see it is the crisis was based on the fact that Sudanese, who are a mix of African and Arab elements, began to distort their identity as a monolithic, simple identity called Arab Islamic identity. And then this distorted vision of the country began to be imposed on the rest of the country that was much more diverse. So even with the South seceding, the remainder of the country, Sudan, is also diverse. So what do we do then? I had suggested, as part of a task force that provided some principles for guiding the mediation of the United States. And that brought CPA, Comprehensive Peace Agreement. We had suggested a framework of one country, two systems. For me personally, and I was very engaged in that as the co-chair of the task force, I thought this would really ensure a degree of unity, and that this one country, two systems would then evolve into one country, one system. But that was misunderstood, and one country, two systems became a basis for Southern secession. Now that we are back to the conflict, I believe we could think of a system of one country, multiple systems, so that different parts of the country, whether you're talking about the East, the West, the New South, which is Nuba Mountains and Southern Blue Nile, the North Nubia, and the center, could each govern itself according to their own guiding principles, which might include Islam, might include a link between religion and the state, or separate them. But anyway, other things have also happened. External actors have become involved. We now have countries. Of course, Egypt has always been interested in the Sudan. We now have the Emirates getting interested in Sudan. We have Saudi Arabia. And beyond that, you have geopolitical interests. Russia is coming in some fashion. The United States is there also. So what was an internal issue of identity and how to manage diversity within the framework of national unity has now become externalized to the point where the situation has become much more complicated. So now we have almost the same challenge of bringing peace, but instead of war between North and South, it is now war within Sudan. But I believe what is at work is both the issue of national identity that is inclusive and how we manage external elements, both in the Arab world and now geopolitical dynamics. And of course, Sudan has always looked externally to the north, that is to the Arab world. Unfortunately, Africa has not played an effective role in bringing about an equation where Sudan can generally be seen as both Arab and African, enriched by the two sources. Unfortunately, instead of seeing this diversity as a source of strength, it has been a source of division. The challenge is now, how do we manage that? We really have very clear evidence that gross discrimination, marginalization, exclusion, and denial of dignity for citizens cannot be a basis for unification, nor can it be a basis for peace. Because every community, every tribe, every entity has a sense of identity and dignity. And in fact, many of these tribes of Sudan see themselves as the model of what God created human beings to be. They think they are the model of dignity and pride, and they see themselves, compared to others, as superior. So I think there is enough in the history of Sudan. There are lessons that are so obvious to us to learn from. So what we then need to do is to say, okay, your voices have been heard. Your guns have shouted loud. Let us all agree that we have grievances, we have legitimate claims to be addressed. So stop the fighting and let us sit together and discuss our differences and how we can accommodate one another. Now, there's such a thing as pride. Nobody's going to say, okay, let's stop fighting and let's talk. You need a third party to mediate. There is face-saving. Any initiative must give each group among the warring factions a sense of face-saving so that they begin to negotiate, not because they are afraid or have been defeated, but because they have been persuaded by a third party that we will look into your grievances and find a just solution to the problem. The question then becomes, who is a credible third party? Many of the third parties might come with their own interests. And that is not easy. I think we need to find parties that reflect both warring factions. For instance, I think we should have African leaders working together with Arab Muslim leaders as mediators. And we should have, when we get to the level of engaging the outside world, we should also make sure that our engaging them is by people who can see both sides. We might even go beyond the African and Arab world to look at international mediators who might be seen as more neutral. So it's a very practical question. Who are going to be the mediators that would, A, have credibility, the wisdom of vision, a clout, effectiveness that is based on of having certain leverage. The leverage might be a combination of carrots and challenges or threats of sticks. And ultimately, what is desired is a vision, a goal of inclusivity and equality and dignity for all that nobody should oppose. Anyone who comes out to say, I am going to abide by my own view of what Sudan should be, and not this globally inclusive vision where all the Sudanese feel a sense of belonging, that is the party to be confronted by all against one, all against that party that doesn't want a system of inclusivity, dignity for all. And frankly, no country can stand on its own, or no group can impose its will in a world where universal human dignity is the guiding principle. Now, the first war went on for 17 years. The second war went on for 22 years. Do we want this war to go on again for many years when we know exactly what the problem is? It's a country that is painfully searching for itself. The war is a wake-up call. Why can't we have the wisdom to see what ultimately will be the outcome instead of waiting years to come to that outcome that we now see? Why don't we act upon it and implement it and have peace? And we begin to move towards, in a sense, building a society, a country that benefits from all our diverse identities.